Today I want to talk about something that Nintendo finds themselves doing in the Nintendo Switch generation that I really don't think anybody expected, because as we find ourselves in this summertime 2024 full of new game announcements, we had Summer Game Fest, we had Sony State of Play kicking things off in late May, and then most recently we had the very impressive Xbox Game Showcase, which had a ton of titles I'm personally interested in. And while at the time of filming we are still waiting on Nintendo to announce their summertime Nintendo Direct that we do know to expect this month, something that's interesting that's been in the conversation online is that Nintendo is unintentionally, or maybe playing 4D chess and intentionally, earning the support of major publishers like Sony and Microsoft. Now, Microsoft is in an interesting strategy and a transition right now where Game Pass is kind of their first core message, what they're trying to sell to all their fans on Xbox hardware, but they're also testing the waters with bringing certain first-party content to other titles, namely Grounded and Pentiment hitting Nintendo Switch, and Sea of Thieves, as well as Hi-Fi Rush hitting PlayStation 5, which was very unprecedented. Now, there's also some reason to believe that Hi-Fi Rush may be headed to the current Switch, and we may indeed see Sea of Thieves drop on the next-gen console, but it's Microsoft testing this new, broader approach of releasing content across any platform. As long as you play it, they are obviously still getting their piece of revenue of the pie. And during Summer Game Fest, we had one major first-party Sony title announced, which was none other than LEGO Horizon, which is confirmed to be headed to PlayStation 5, PC, and none other than Nintendo Switch day one. And we now find ourselves in an environment where for select games, it is in the conversation that Nintendo is in a best of both worlds scenario where we may see select first-party Microsoft games come over, and in fact we will see more of that, and we'll talk about a quote from Phil Spencer that suggests that yes indeed we will, following some of these major Xbox Game Showcase announcements, and now these select Sony titles potentially being in the conversation also to head to Nintendo hardware, all by Nintendo focusing on their own unique path in gaming. And this is a fascinating topic to me, so we're going to dive into all of the details. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And I want to first kick it off with the Sony portion of the conversation, because some people online may look at LEGO Horizon and kind of dismiss it as, well, maybe this was just the LEGO company asking for the rights to publish this game on Nintendo Switch, and it doesn't indicate that Sony will want to bring any of their first-party content to Nintendo consoles in the future. Well, that is definitely a possibility, but it is also very mysteriously missing the Xbox Series consoles, and even though it's headed to PC, Nintendo Switch, and PS5, it's clearly out of the conversation, or Sony does not want it to be on Xbox hardware, meaning they are okay in some world with releasing certain games for the Nintendo Switch that they do not want to go to their more direct competitor as they view them, which is Microsoft. Now, we do have MLB The Show, which is a multi-platform game that is published from Sony's first-party studios. However, this one is a little bit more of a requirement from MLB and some licensing agreements with that, and just because it's a first-party published Sony title, they're still putting it on everything. But LEGO Horizon, a collaboration between LEGO and Guerrilla Games, supporting some of the development of this title, like this is playing with one of Sony's major first-party IP, and they are okay with it just showing up on Nintendo consoles. I think that speaks volume of how they view the Switch as maybe an additional platform like the PC to reach more gamers, but not necessarily something that is taking away anything from their ecosystem, which I think is the bigger win that Nintendo finds themselves walking away with, that yes, they're competing within the same gaming landscape, but they are viewed as not a direct threat to these other massive gaming publishers, and Microsoft is absolutely no doubt viewing them as yet another platform that they can port their games to. Whether or not we see more Sony support anytime soon remains to be seen, but we are seeing a lot of first-party PlayStation content ultimately make it over to PC, and you have to now stop and ask yourself if there is indeed a world where when we are talking about more powerful hardware that we will no doubt receive with the successor to the Nintendo Switch, would Sony consider putting some of their first-party content as well on Nintendo hardware? It is definitely a possibility. It is not confirmed, but will we one day be playing God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok on the successor to the Nintendo Switch? It's not entirely a 100% for sure no at this point, like I would have maybe once predicted it was, which again is a huge win for Nintendo. All of the while, you have Xbox revealing all of these massive first-party games at their game showcase, many of which I am personally excited for. Perfect Dark, a franchise that started back on the N64 64 now potentially being in the conversation for its big return, one day hitting a next-gen Nintendo Switch console. I could see that game in the conversation, and it looked really cool with some of like the first-person parkour elements mixed in with all of the various espionage-style game mechanics you would expect to see. And this one I'm definitely going to have my eye on. Doom: The Dark Ages I think will for sure come to most every platform, but definitely in the conversation for the next-gen Switch. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is one of those games that I feel like it will be an Xbox exclusive for at least the foreseeable future once it launches. But is that one of those games that a year down the line Microsoft does decide to take it multi-platform and kind of use it as an additional lever to pull to get their first party games to sell on other platforms? It's definitely in that realm of possibility, in my opinion. South of Midnight is a game that I didn't expect to be talking about at all as one that's exciting to me, but as soon as I saw the combat, the gameplay style, very reminiscent of kind of a Souls-like with the dodge roll mechanics and parry mechanics and things, but has a ton of personality to it, as well as some really cool open world traversals type of stuff where you're flying through the air, grappling onto various different objects to traverse, with some interesting looking platforming and some different, story-based cutscenes all throughout. Like, this is one of those games that just kind of popped out of left field for me, and yeah, it's, I think, in the conversation one day to be on Nintendo hardware. Expedition 33 probably takes the cake for like a super cool evolution in the turn-based RPG franchise, because when you look at the actual interface of how you're attacking various enemies and timing things, like, it's a perfect mix between having a menu system and choosing your plan of attack, but then also having some real-time in the moment elements to it. Like, I'm really excited to see more of the gameplay for that, and I don't always get into turn-based RPGs, but this one again has my interest peaked. All of that to say, many other games we could go through in terms of ones that are interesting to me, but nonetheless, Microsoft has also commented directly after that showcase that they are in the business of bringing stuff to more platforms. Now, we might see them even entertain the idea of bringing a lot of these to PlayStation day and date, if not a little bit after some kind of exclusivity period, but they very much intend on expanding out, and Nintendo, I think, is their first choice before Sony with a lot of these titles. And you can see the following article from My Nintendo News, which outlines this, where it says, Phil Spencer, you are going to see more of our games on more platforms. No matter what formats you own, it was clear that Xbox had a strong game showcase yesterday. In a recent interview after the event with the head of Xbox, Phil Spencer, it emerged the company is rolling out full steam ahead in bringing its games to other platforms. While this is unlikely to affect the current Nintendo Switch system, it seems likely that some of the games showcased at the event will come to the more powerful Switch successor when it launches next year. And that's where my thought process is with all of this. We are probably not going to see many of these announcements other than games like Lego Horizon and a few of the more simple projects that Microsoft has in their back pocket potentially affect the current Nintendo Switch. But as we talk about the transition to way more powerful hardware in their next gen console, I do think that this really starts to become a best of both worlds scenario, and Nintendo walking away kind of viewed as that additional platform that is in gaming, still competing with Sony and Microsoft, but not directly stealing from them their subscribers and their community, to where they kind of view Nintendo as the first additional console to potentially release their first party content on. And while these companies are crafting up some very exciting games, that is just a huge win for Nintendo gamers at the end of the day. Nintendo, while directly still creating console hardware and competing in the same space, because they don't compete directly on power, and maybe you could argue they don't exactly go for the entire same demographic as what Sony and Microsoft primarily target, that they are somehow walking away kind of viewed as just as an additional revenue stream for these companies, and us players win at the end of the day. So that's where I really want to hear from you guys. What over the summertime announcements of new games are you excited to see maybe be in the conversation to come to Nintendo console hardware in the future? Or are there some that you are very excited just to check out on other consoles, period? And do you indeed think that Nintendo is really doing something that no one expected in the Switch lifecycle, where they're kind of separating themselves from being a direct competitor and rather being in the conversation of having a lot of third-party and now even first-party support from Sony and Microsoft going forward? Or do you think there will largely be some one-off support here and there, but nothing massively changing from a total games perspective on their next-gen console hardware? Because I definitely think once they have more power to play with, we are going to be seeing a lot more games launch day and date, if not a little bit after, when we're talking about major first-party Xbox and PlayStation franchises. So thanks so much for watching the video today, everyone. Make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.